What's up, everyone? So today we're talking about veganism and vegetarianism. Now, some people have gotten this strange thought in their head that I am anti-vegan or anti-vegetarianism. That is absolutely not true. I am, however, anti a few other things. So I'm anti-BS, I'm anti-bro-science, I'm anti-pseudoscience, I'm anti-people making documentaries when they have conflicts of interest, I am anti-people scamming others, I am anti a lot of things, but I am not anti-vegan or anti-vegetarianism. For the simple reason that I don't care. I don't care what you eat. If you eat animals, awesome. If you don't eat animals, awesome. I don't really care that much, and it's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. Again, for the simple reason that I don't care. A lot of my clients are vegan. There are a lot of Indians on Quora, and so a lot of them are my clients, and a lot of them are vegan. That is completely fine. If you're vegan, I will write you a plan that takes that into account. I'm not going to be like, you're vegan? Oh, I don't write plans for vegans. No, okay, that is your choice, your preference, and we will work around that. So in this video, we're going to look at a few different things. We're going to examine the concept of bias. We're going to look at my own bias. We're going to look at the bias of my sources. And we're going to look at the bias of the filmmakers of the documentary The Game Changers. I think bias is something that is not discussed enough, and it is absolutely vital because it shapes the way you think, what you think, how you react to certain data. It affects your entire worldview. And I think if more people thought about their own bias and thought about how that impacts what they say and what they do, the world would be a better and more logical place. We're also going to look at the actual scientific data and the literature in response to a few questions. Is meat unhealthy? Is it really going to kill you? We're going to talk about, is a vegan diet the actually, healthiest diet? Is veganism going to be optimal from a health and longevity perspective? We're also going to talk about what happens if you eat meat versus not eating meat from a muscle gaining standpoint. And we're going to talk about how to build muscle as a vegan. So if you're a vegan, if you're a vegetarian, if that is your personal choice, how to optimize the process of gaining muscle and gaining strength. First, let's talk about bias. So I would say my own bias, the biggest form of bias that I have is going to be the fact that I eat meat. I am a meat eater. I like eating meat. I enjoy eating meat. I eat meat on a very regular basis, basically every day. However, if you don't eat meat, I don't really care. It's not really something that affects me. It's not like I own a sausage factory out here in Shenzhen. It's not like I'm an investor in Bacon Bits. Your choices don't really impact me. I'm not selling any kind of ideology. I'm not selling any kind of products. I don't endorse any kind of products. Have you ever seen me endorse any kind of product? No, mostly because I don't really care either way. And I don't really think, way, get it? Haha. But typically, I don't really push any kind of products. So I don't have any kind of investment in any kind of vegan or non-vegan situation. So basically, I just don't care. For this video, I'm going to be drawing heavily from two different sources. One is going to be Layne Norton's The Game Changers Review, a scientific analysis. And the second one is going to be Menno Henselman's The Game Changers Documentary Scientific Review. I highly respect both men. I think both are leaders in the evidence-based world, and they are both fantastic. However, they are both meat eaters. I know Menno has done keto for a while, which means he's almost certainly going to be eating quite a bit of meat, and neither are vegans. At the same time, I don't think either of them are really, it's not like, again, they have a bacon factory near where they're, near where they live. They don't really have any incentive for you to eat meat. They're just telling you the facts, the real facts, not the biased facts. Now let's look at the Game Changers' potential bias. So James Cameron, the executive producer, you might know him for, Titanic, Terminator, etc. But he is also the founder and CEO of Verdient Foods, an organic pea protein company. Well, there you go. The producer is a CEO of an organic pea protein company. Come on, like how much more bias can you get? Arnold Schwarzenegger, you love him, I love him, legend, politician, bodybuilder, awesome guy, inspiration, legend. He is part owner of Ladder, a supplement company that sells some vegan products. Again, conflicts of interest. If you look at almost all of the doctors that they interviewed, almost all either sell vegan products or vegan books or somehow profit from veganism. So Dr. Dean Ornish, he's the founder of the Ornish diet. It's very popular, but it is low fat, high carb, low protein. That is basically veganism. That is very, very similar to veganism. If you look at Dr. Aaron Spitz, he is the author, I kid you not, of The Penis Book, a plant-based book on penile function. Yep. And if you look at the rest of the doctors, I'll put a screenshot on the screen. They are all also heavily involved in the vegan community. If you look at the game changers and you are a vegan supporter, if you're a vegetarian, if you want to believe that veganism and vegetarianism are the best, you can find plenty of stuff to support your beliefs, simply because they are ignoring anything that doesn't support their beliefs. So it's a bit of an echo chamber. I wouldn't call it a cult. I would never call veganism or vegetarianism a cult, but it is a community, and it does have a lot of people who are merely saying the things that other people want to hear. A lot of this is to push vegan products. A lot of this might be for an ideological reason, which, it happens. It's not a bad thing. I think for the planet, veganism isn't bad, but it is being dishonest. Even if you're being dishonest for what you think is a good reason, it's still being dishonest. If you have 100 pieces of data about veganism, and you find 10 that support your view, and 80 that do not support your view, and 10 that don't really say anything either way, and you only choose the 10 that support your view, that is being intellectually dishonest. And they do this throughout the film. I would say the vast majority of the film is extremely, extremely dishonest. So what they do throughout the film is they pick an athlete who is near the top of their field, and they say, this person is vegan. Look how good they are. It's because they're vegan. But you don't know that. They could have actually been better if they ate meat. It is not actually looking at any kind of data in an honest way. It is just saying this person doesn't eat meat, they're really good, and therefore it's because they didn't eat meat. But that doesn't make any sense, okay? Especially when you ignore all the other athletes who do eat meat. If you look at most bodybuilders, even natural bodybuilders, most of them are not vegan. Yes, you might find the occasional one who is vegan and who is successful, but often what happens is that they built their physique before, when they were not vegan, or they're on steroids. So they find a strong man in this documentary, and they don't disclose a few things. First, he's almost certainly on steroids. Second, they say he set a world record with 1,200 pounds, but they don't disclose the fact that since then, that world record has actually been broken by like 300 pounds by two athletes who both eat meat. If you're not talking about that, they're just not talking about that because it doesn't support their view, but that's not being honest. They also talk about how a peanut butter sandwich has as much protein as 3 eggs or a 3-ounce steak. Well, this might be true on the surface, but anyone who has counted calories or counted macros, they realize that protein is usually going to be the toughest macro to hit. You have to go out of your way to hit it. Especially if you're dieting, often your protein will be fairly high, and your carbs and your fats will be relatively lower. In order to hit those numbers, you need sources that have a lot of protein, but not very many carbs and not very much fat. This is very, very difficult to do on a vegan diet, which is the reason why most vegans, they tend to supplement. This isn't a bad thing. And actually they talk about this because a lot of them are selling vegan supplements. But if you want to go for a purely natural diet, especially when you're cutting, that is going to be extremely difficult on a vegan or vegetarian diet. When I work with vegans or vegetarians, it's very tricky. I'll be honest, it is more difficult for me to write a plan for a vegan or vegetarian simply because we need to be more careful with the food choices, especially when they are very restricted in terms of calories. They also talk about gorillas. Gorillas are vegan, they're vegetarian, they don't eat any meat, any animal products, and yet they are jacked. They are huge, they are massive, bigger than people. Now, the obvious answer, the obvious rebuttal to this is that a gorilla is not a human being. They have different digestive systems, and they eat, I kid you not, 18 kilograms of food per day. You want to go do that? You want to go eat 18 kilos of bamboo? Have fun, okay? It's not an intellectually honest comparison because they are getting in 400 to 500 grams of protein per day. Again, have fun eating a whole tree per day. But enough about that, let's look at the actual data, the actual scientific studies, reviews, umbrella reviews, meta-analyses, etc. So a lot of this is going to come from Menno Henselman's awesome website. Definitely check it out. I'll link it in the description below. So the first question is, meat going to kill me? Is it actually worse from a longevity perspective? Is it worse from a disease prevention perspective? So recently, the Annals of Internal Medicine, 2 N's, not 1 N, that's a very big difference. It's a different magazine. They published what is currently, arguably, the most comprehensive review of the health effects of red meat. After weighing the evidence of 5 new systematic reviews of the literature, they concluded that there's insufficient evidence to reduce red meat intake. Shortly after, another umbrella review of systematic reviews and meta-analyses concluded that past associations between meat, processed red meat even, and negative health effects are biased and of poor methodological quality. The better the study design, the lower the probability of an association. Moreover, the overall certainty in the evidence was very low across all individual outcomes due to serious risk of bias and imprecision. Sound familiar? By the way, an umbrella review is about as high level as it gets. A scientific study is just one study. A meta-analysis is reviewing a few studies, and an umbrella review is reviewing many meta-analyses. So it is really taking into account a lot of information and a lot of data. By the way, for the average person, they should be eating more vegetables. I'm not saying don't eat more vegetables. I'm just saying that you can eat meat in moderation and absolutely still be healthy. So let's talk about, is the vegan diet the healthiest diet? Maybe not. A lot of studies are mixed. So many studies will show no to little effect. Some will say some effects on some aspects of health. So vegetarians had a lower risk of cancer than meat eaters, but fish eaters had just as low of a risk as vegetarians. Often some studies will say, dairy is fine. Other studies will say dairy has a small risk, but most will say no effect. So if most studies are saying no effect, and some are saying yes, some are saying no, you shouldn't interpret that data as saying that, dairy is wrong or dairy is harmful. You should interpret that data looking at all of the data, not just that small portion that affects and supports your viewpoint. So what happens when you add meat to your diet if you're strength training? Well, they added 160 grams of cooked meat to their diet 3 days a week to elderly strength training women, and actually they gained more muscle. They gained more strength. They had a greater reduction in measured inflammation and 0 adverse effects on blood lipids or blood pressure. So often you hear meat is very inflammatory. Well, not in this case. And you also have populations like the Inuit who never eat any plants. They have a purely carnivorous diet. They only eat meat, nothing else. And often they have a very low incidence of heart disease, and they are extremely healthy from a blood work perspective. So is plant protein superior to animal protein? This is one claim that the documentary makes all the time. They say that it is superior, it's going to aid performance, it's going to build muscle, build strength better. So is this actually true? One study compared strength training men that consumed either a lacto-ovo-vegetarian diet or an omnivorous diet where 50% of protein intake came from meat. The meat eaters gained significantly more muscle. Another study in 2002, they found that those who ate soy protein or beef protein gained the same strength and muscle. However, The beef group gained about 50% more cross-sectional size area. It was 6% versus 4.2%, which is a pretty big difference. Another study found that milk was better for muscle growth with the same macros compared to soy protein. And a lot of this is going to be hormonal. So dairy is typically, it releases a lot of IGF-1, which is going to be incredibly anabolic, growth hormone, to a certain extent, testosterone, and actually cholesterol as well is going to be very associated with muscular and strength gains. And most vegans aren't getting in a lot of cholesterol simply because vegan sources aren't a good source of cholesterol. And cholesterol, it's one of those things that is absolutely demonized for, decades. People said that, if you have too much, if you eat more than 1 egg per day, you're gonna have a heart attack. Well, that is not true. That has been debunked for decades, and I still hear it all the time. Some other studies, they compared soy protein to whey protein or other animal protein supplements. A few found that they were equally effective. There was no significant difference, but the majority found that animal proteins are better. So, at the very most optimistic level, you could say that plants are equal, but if most of the literature, most of the data, most of the information is pointing to animal proteins being better, I would bet that animal proteins are better, if I was a betting man. So, what to do if you are a vegan or a vegetarian, if you've made that choice, if it's a personal choice of yours. By the way, anything I've said in this video that seems negative, it is not negative towards those who have chosen that choice. That is your choice, that's on you, that is perfectly fine by me. Anything negative I've said is towards those who are exploiting this pseudoscience or are misinterpreting the data to sell products for their own financial gain. That is one thing that pisses me off more than almost anything. So, how do you build muscle as a vegan? Well, I think it's actually important in this case to count calories, simply because you need to be careful about getting in enough protein. It's going to be tougher, it's going to be harder. You probably are going to need to supplement to get to that 1.6 grams per kilo that the data suggests is optimal. If you just eat freely, you probably will be under 100 grams per day. That's just where most people lie, where most people fall. So count your calories, make sure you're getting in enough protein, and make sure you're not going over in your carbs and your fats. If you're trying to get in a ton of protein and you're just eating, rice and pasta and other foods like that, that's going to be a ton of carbs and not that much protein. So make sure you're counting accurately every day and make sure you're hitting the numbers that you need to be hitting. I can already tell that there are going to be people who point out, oh, look at this guy, he's vegan and he's jacked, ripped, shredded, stacked, packed, macked, he's just massive. Well, a few things, 3 things. 1, he could be on steroids. You don't know what he's doing. There are plenty of fake naturals. Don't just think that because someone claims vegan, they're not going to use steroids. It happens. 2, he definitely has different genetics from you, right? He could be genetically gifted. And 3, you don't even know if he's actually vegan. He could be, doing hot dog shots in the bathroom. Who knows? Who knows? So based on the data, I would say your results would be at best equal to a meat eater, if not a little bit slower, or your genetic muscular potential might be a little bit lower, but you can still make progress. All right, that's all for today. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. Peace.